how are y'all doing today? Today we're going to talk about something a little bit different than we've done before. Instead of a specific leadership style, we're going to actually talk about a specific individual in leadership. And specifically what we're going to talk about is women in leadership roles. I want to start out by sharing something with you. It's called the Feminist Papers. It's called the Good Wife's Guide. And this was something that was actually published in a home economics textbook that was taught to kids in the 50s. Now, I'm not going to read all this to you, but to kind of give you an idea. Have dinner. This is what women should do. Have dinner ready. Plan ahead, even the night before, to have a delicious meal on the table. This is a way of letting him know that you have been thinking of him and are concerned about his needs. Most men are hungry when they come home from work. The prospects of a good meal are part of the warm welcome that is required. Now, this is important also. You should prepare yourself. Take 15 minutes to rest so you'll be refreshed when he arrives. Touch up your makeup. Put a ribbon in your hair and be fresh looking. He has just been with a lot of work-weary people. Be a little gay when he comes in. Be a little more interesting. His day has been beyond anything that you have dealt with all day. One last thing, and this is important to me. Clear away the clutter. Make one last trip to the main part of the house just before your husband arrives, gathering up school books, toys, papers, and so forth. Run a dust cloth over the table. Your husband will feel as if he has reached a haven of order, and it'll give you a lift too. See, I'm a bachelor and I live alone, and I have to hire a cleaning lady to come clean my place. so I really appreciate it when Cindy's been there and taking care of things. So I can really relate to that. Actually, I want to mention that because it's just kind of the way things have changed. Of course, what we're going to talk about today is women in leadership. I'm going to start out with a quote. When you meet a human being, the first distinction you make is male or female. And you're accustomed to making this distinction with unhesitating certainty, Sigmund Freud. Now, I know there's room for jokes here. However, we're going to go ahead and go with straight up with what Mr. Freud had to say. Now, one of the things that I ask people whenever we're talking about women is we all have a woman in our lives. We have someone that's central, important in our lives, whether you're male or female, but males in particular. Think about who that important woman is in your life. Of course, we all have a mother. Many of us have sisters, wives. However, in my life, this is the important woman in my life. This is my daughter, Morgan. She's 19 years old. She's a junior here at Western. And one of the reasons that I actually like talking about this is when I hear the term feminist, I don't think negative things. When I hear the term feminist, I think equal opportunity. Now, I know there's a left and a right to this, and I'm going to present from dead down to center. I'll be honest with you, I don't like the left. I think they're too far left. I don't like the right. I think they're too far right. But I do believe that women deserve the equal opportunity of everyone else. And I want the woman in my life, Morgan Askins, to have equal opportunity to do anything she desires to do in life. So this is something that's important to me, and it is something that I believe in. And it's something I'm going to quiz you over, so take some notes. Be guaranteed there'll be something on the left that'll piss you off on the right, piss you people on the right off. There'll be something from the right that'll piss you people from the left off. So be guaranteed that's going to happen. Okay, women in leadership history. Start out with apprenticeship programs. Apprenticeship programs was one of the real early mentions of women in education. Education being the key to moving into leadership roles in the vast majority of cases. However, while we had apprenticeship programs going back thousands of years, we never saw women mentioned in any apprenticeship program until the 1600s. We start seeing them participate in any kind of numbers, and we start seeing provisions made for women that are a part of these training programs. That's basically the education we had for so many years. 1600s. Women in schools. In the United States, the first high school to admit women did so in 1824. I mean, we've been a country for 50 years, And it was 1824 in Massachusetts before we ever had a woman that attended high school. Attending a college, 1837, a few years later, I guess they graduated from high school, they can go to college now. 1837, Oberlin College actually began admitting women to school. Now, was the United States on the cutting edge of this? And the answer is absolutely not. The United States lagged significantly behind other countries when it came to the education of women. Basically, half our population's talents were not being utilized. There was one significant thing that happened in the United States that opened the door for women in education. Anybody have any idea what that might be? The pens are gone. There they are. It was one-room schoolhouses. When the United States decided they would start putting these one-room schoolhouses in districts across the country, they said, all right, so we've got this house. We're going to have this school, this one-room schoolhouse. We need somebody that will work cheap and is good with kids. They said, women, we don't have to pay them very much. Now, basically what's happened to teachers is all these years later, they still don't pay teachers very much. Are most teachers men or female? Most teachers are female. As a matter of fact, the vast majority of teachers are female. You get into the elementary schools, males are a rarity. In junior high, they become more common. In high school, they're still the majority. In universities, there's somewhat of a divide. Probably a little bit more male, but nonetheless, females still dominate education. But what happened is we have people teaching in one-room schoolhouses. We've got to give them some kind of education too. And this is what really opened the door for women to get an education and to have opportunity in leadership roles. Now, I know there's women that still had leadership roles without that, but education being the key for mobility, for moving up and so forth. Smith-Hughes Act. Smith-Hughes Act occurred in 1917, and what this act did is it actually established vocational programs in the United States. Now that may seem insignificant, but this act came about because of an issue we had in the United States. What's going on in 1917? World War I. Prior to 1917, where did we get most of our skilled labor? Europe. As a matter of fact, the majority of the skilled labor coming from Europe was coming from Germany, no less. Germans aren't sending people to the United States in 1917. They're fighting a war. As a matter of fact, all the Europeans are. So all of a sudden, we don't have skilled labor coming in. We said, we've got to do something to develop skilled labor. So they developed this Smith-Hughes Act in 1917 to provide skilled labor training in schools, of course vocational schools, but this is the key for women, is they said we're going to establish this in 3 areas. Area 1 is going to be T&I, that's trade and industrial. That's going to be the traditional trades, welding, electricity, machining and so forth. Agriculture is going to be one of them. And the last one, home economics. Home economics was set up for females. These were male-oriented. Now, I'm not saying we didn't have maybe a female slip in ag now and again. We probably did. It's not something that's talked about, but probably did. Home economics was not set up for males. That was female. Matter of fact, it was years and years and years later before a male was even allowed in home economics. So at any rate, they set these programs up, and they set aside $14.4 million to fund these programs. This was absolutely a phenomenal amount of money at this time. And they divided it equally. Home economics got a full 1/3 of all that money that went in. These programs were highly, highly successful. And as I say, what this did is it really established that the United States was starting to say, hey, we want to pay attention to women here. We want to notice what they're doing. We're going to have to do something to help develop them also. This is a valuable part of the workforce of leadership that we're not taking advantage of. So Smith Hughes, 1917. Women's suffrage. Women's suffrage was actually going on along about the same time, resulting in the 19th Amendment. Probably a good term to remember, the 19th Amendment. 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote. That was in 1920, I do believe. Got one right here to the side that I kind of added this on. It was something that actually had an impact, though it wasn't something it was directly meant to. It was kind of around the back door. Rosie the Riveter. Rosie the Riveter became famous during World War II. Basically what happened, the United States is in a situation again, skilled labor. Certainly not getting any immigrants, but even our skilled labor in the United States, they're in the military. They're overseas fighting the war. They said, hey, we still need somebody to build tanks, to build airplanes, to build ships, munitions. We've still got to run a country. So they said, where can we find people? Women. Women came into the workforce in droves during World War II. Rosie the Riveter was a real famous person that went to work, and she became a symbol of women coming into the workforce and being part of the war effort. A bit of trivia for you. Where was Rosie the Riveter from? Somerset, Kentucky. Rosie the Riveter was a local girl. Next one I want to mention is 1975 acts. Now, when we talk about the 75 acts, and you think about how things were when women were really oppressed, we think about it as being a long time ago. Now, you all may think about 75 as being a long time ago, but I was in high school in 1975. It wasn't that long ago. So at any rate, 1975, the United States began a series of educational acts aimed at overcoming discrimination for women and opportunities that women had. Now, they actually preference this as overcoming discrimination for everybody. Racial discrimination was pretty much a focus of the 60s. This right here really focused on women, but men actually benefited from this too. And when I say men benefited from it, I'll give you an example. Remember I said that home economics was female only? One of the things they said is if women want to get in trades, they can get in them. We're going to encourage you to put women in trades. If they want to get in ag, we want that. If men want to get in home economics, everyone kind of benefited, we want that. And what happened when these acts started passing, women went into trades. Not in droves, but they had the opportunity. Today we push a little bit. We say, hey, you have to have a certain graduation rate, or you have to have a balanced group, diverse group that's in your class, and they'll want you to encourage you to bring diverse populations in. So they might say something, what kind of woman that graduates is on 1.5 people? Why, if you just graduate males, we only count them as one. I don't know if I agree with that. Actually, I don't agree with it, but nonetheless, it's reality. But the home economics was kind of funny. I'm in high school in 1975, and there is no guy with any self-respect beside the home economics class. That's a woman's class. So where I went to school, Meade County High School, our principal couldn't get people to enroll in this class, of course. So we had this deal at school. If you were a senior and you had all your credits and were in good standing, we would always give you the last period, 6th period study hall. And that way you could leave an hour early and you'd go to work somewhere, probably, hopefully do something productive. When I was a senior, I got out an hour early. So this was a big deal and everybody wanted it. Well, we had this guy at Meade County High School, his name was Jimmy Brown. Jimmy Brown was the biggest, toughest guy in the school. Not a bad fella. He actually died shortly after getting out of high school, running from the cops on a motorcycle and hit a tree. But at any rate, big tough guy, nice guy. He wanted to get out 6th period. So he made the application, and the principal, Vernon Wilson, came to him and he said, Jimmy said, I'm not going to let you out 6th period. And he was like, what? Just a minute now. I said, I've done everything you asked of me. I've played the game. I've done right. I deserve to get out 6th period. He said, yeah. I said, I need a favor from you. He said, you've got all the classes you need to graduate. He said, you've even got a couple extra classes that we can take. I want you to take home economics. He said, I don't know if I can do that. He said, look, if you want to get out an hour early, you take home economics. He said, well, why are you so intent on me taking home economics? He said, well, they're on my back about putting males in home economics class. He said, I need someone to break that barrier. And I know if you're in there, no one's going to give you any crap because you can whip everybody in school. So anyhow, Jimmy agreed to do it. And Jimmy broke the barrier at Meade County High School as the first male in home economics class. I always thought that was so amusing. You all may not realize this, but in 1974, the year before this, in 1974, would you believe that there had never been a female anchor the news desk on a national newscast in the United States ever? And in 1974, with the retirement of somebody, they decided that they would get this one newscast, one of the big three, would have a female anchor. You know who it was? It was Barbara Walters. And the night that Barbara Walters anchored the newscast, everybody in America, and I mean everybody, including me and my father and mother, watched the national news to see Barbara Walters do that. That was in '74. Can you believe that it was that recent ago, that it was such a novelty to have a woman do something that we just take for granted today? There's been a lot of change. Now, we've got all this change going on, and women are gaining and gaining and gaining, and we turn around and things almost got out of hand. By the 1990s, the 80s and 90s, in 90 years, women have gone from inferior to men to where now people are writing papers, they're making comments, there's commentary, there's programs that say women are superior to men. They're smarter than men are. They're better workers than men. Women can do so much more than men can do. I didn't like that. Didn't like it then, don't like it now. I think of the sexes as equal opportunity. I don't think of it as men being superior or women being superior. We've all got things that we're good at. So anyhow, this was something that was kind of in the 80s, late 80s, 90s. Women are superior. So they went from inferior to superior. Then things have kind of leveled out since then. Race board, guys. Now, what I'd like, I had another story I was going to tell you. Mary Tyler Moore. There used to be a show called The Mary Tyler Moore Show. You all may well have seen it. And Mary Tyler Moore was a woman that worked on a newscast. And at any rate, it was in Minneapolis, Minnesota. She was single. And I always remember this. It was in the 70s also, when there was a lot of things about women not having the opportunity that males have. And she got this job, and she was so excited about it. And she, anyhow, worked. She wrote copy for the guys presenting the news and women. She had a guy that worked with her. His name was Murray. And at any rate, her and Murray wrote these copies for everyone. And one day, Mary finds out what Murray makes, and it's a lot more money than what she makes. And she is so upset. And she goes to the boss, and the boss was this big, gruff guy, real traditionalist. She goes to him and she says, we need to have a talk. She said, I have found out that Murray makes $5,000 more than I make. I have just as much experience, plus I have a college degree. I do the same thing he does, yet I'm being paid $5,000 less. I would like you to explain to me, why is that the case? Her boss looked at her and said, because he's a man, he's got a family, that's why. Got any other questions? She don't. Okay, thanks. Turned and walks out. That's the way it was. That's the way people thought, and that's the way people thought it was perfectly acceptable. Now, what I'd like to do right now is something called the WAMS activity. You all have this where you can download it. The WAMS activity is Women as Managers Scale. I'd like you to take this. And what you're going to have here is you're going to have 21 questions. And you got a Likert scale that you're going to respond to those questions with, and it's going to be, a 1 to 7. Now, how they came up with a 1 to 7 scale on this is completely beyond me. I've never seen that before, but we do have a 1 to 7 scale. So, go ahead and do that. Just pause me right now. Okay, I'm going to assume that you all have already completed this. Now what I want to do is I want to show you how to go about scoring this. First thing you're going to do is I want you to reverse the score on the following items. Items 1, 3, 6, 7, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20, and 21. I want you to reverse the score. Now when I say reverse the score, what I'm saying is if you scored at a 7, it changes to a 1. Just on these items, okay? 6 is 2, 5 is 3. You actually don't reverse the 4, but I put it up there for you anyway. 3 is 5, 2 is 6, and 1 is 7. So I need for you to do that. Got me paused right now while you're doing that. When you get all those reversed, just those numbers, I want you to add everything up and have one total, okay? You got me paused right now and you're doing that. I could tell you some jokes right now, but you're not listening to me since you paused. Okay, now I'm going to assume that you've got that taken care of. Now, this is very simple inventory, and all it does is it looks at your attitude towards women as managers or women that would have some type of leadership role. This is kind of a little more looser than some of the activities we've done, but I like activities and inventories. WAMS activities. Males and females do have a different score. Top 25. If you're a male and you scored a 118 or above, or a female of 131 or above, it would say that you have a positive view of women in leadership roles. This is not something that you have a problem with. I don't mind telling you I scored above 118. Not a lot, but I scored above 118. The middle group right here, males 190 or 91 to 117, females 110 to 130. So you have a neutral view. So, I don't care if they are or not. No big deal. Doesn't make any difference. And the bottom 25, you scored below a 90 or 109, would say that I look at females in a negative light. In leadership roles, it's not something I'm comfortable with. Really, I take supervision well from people, and I don't have a problem with it at all. I've thought a little bit about my experiences with males and females in leadership roles. Since I have been at a university, I have had 6 department heads. Of the 6 department heads I've had, 5 were male, 1 was female. And I thought, how does she rate with the others? She was the second worst I ever had. I don't think it's because she's female, but she's the second worst I ever had. I had a male that was worse than her, and he was quite a bit worse than her. And it's not Greg Arbuckle, incidentally. I think Greg does a good job. I'm very happy with him as department head. I've also had 6 different deans that I've worked for. Of the deans that I've worked for, 2 of them have been female. Dean-wise, I tell you, both female deans did a good job. Don't rate them number 1. Number 1 was a guy, but I think they both did a very good job. They were people I respected. I've got 2 male deans that I think were terrible. One of them I think was absolutely beyond belief horrible. However, so I think I look at myself as kind of neutral, and I try to look very objective at my experiences. So at any rate, those are my experiences and people that would have direct supervision over me that I've interacted with. And this is just food for thought. You all think about your experiences. Now, let's look at some points about women in leadership roles. Women make up 47% of the workforce. That's pretty good numbers, 47% of the workforce. Question for you, do women lead differently? Think they do? Most people say, yes, women do lead differently. And there's nothing wrong with that. Different, good in some situations, not as good in others. Do you think that women are more interpersonal or task-driven when they're at work? Most research would suggest that women are more interpersonal and men are more task. Is this good or bad? I don't know. It's different. Don't have an answer for you. Are women more democratic or autocratic? Most studies would say that women are more democratic, while men are more autocratic. I find that when someone first establishes themselves in a role, this is Brent's theory here. This has nothing to do with real established. Brent's experience is the women I've worked with have been more autocratic when they started out and have moved to Democrat. I think they've become more comfortable with themselves and they've moved to Democrat. I find the men are more democratic and moved to autocratic. So I think they come to where their natural is. And I could give you all some very specific examples of that, but it's a little close to home, so I'm not going to go into that right now. But at any rate, let me ask you this. Why do men and women lead differently if that is true? And from our standpoint today, we're going to say it is. It's because of social roles. Is we all have social roles that we have learned that we believe are expected of us, and we start emulating some of those social roles. Good or bad. Women in social roles. The first one I'm going to put up here is a Brent Askin study. Brent Askin study is, I just took the things around me and said, let's evaluate this. Here's a scenario. I teach an AMS department. I've been in AMS department since 2000. I've actually been in Western since 92. I spent the first 8 years in College of Education, transferred up here. So I've been in Western for 25 years. At any rate, the AMS department started in 1928. It was originally called Manual Arts. Manual Arts gave way to Industrial Education. Industrial Education gave way to Industrial Technology. And then in 2000, when I transferred up here, Industrial Technology gave way to Architecture and Manufacturing Sciences. Incidentally, the old Industrial Technology term is very, very common. Sometimes they'll refer to it as Industrial Engineering Technology. But at any rate, that's very common across the United States. So that's just how the department has developed since 1928. 1970s, AMS was the largest department on this campus, and quite a bit at that. 1980s, department starts dropping, and it drops and it drops and it drops. You get into the 1990s, and man, they're holding on, just barely holding on. 2000, this department is on the verge of closing. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of history right now. And I'm telling you this just because I think people ought to know in this department. This department was on the verge of closing late 1990s. And what had happened is we had basically 3 senior faculty that had been great faculty at one time and probably got old and they just weren't doing their job. We had 3, 4 junior faculty that were brand new, and they had a little bit of an attitude, a little bit of arrogance, and they weren't exactly doing what they should have been doing either. So we got 7 people in the department and things aren't going like they should. Well, there was actually another senior faculty, was department head. He just took over as department head. And he said every time I would try to do something, said I couldn't get it done because these 3 guys would override me. See, there's a lot of things we do are very democratic. He said I kept getting overrode by these 3 people. Terry Leeper is his name. So at any rate, Terry said I knew we were in trouble. He said they wouldn't let me get rid of these guys because the seniors were dumping stuff on them, and they were just catering up to the seniors, and the students were in the middle. So they wouldn't let Terry hire new faculty. So what he did is he went out and he got transfers within the school of disgruntled faculty. So what happened is you had a guy named Kavi Katir. He was Iranian. He was in engineering technology, and he was a good guy, but him and the department head didn't get along. He transfers in. We had a guy named Greg Mills. Some of y'all remember Greg. Greg and the department head got along over there, but there were some things that he saw an opportunity here Greg transfers over. You got me down to College of Education. I'm out of this department also. I wasn't that happy down there. I transfer in. Now all of a sudden, it's 3 of us against 3 of them with Terry the deciding vote. And the first thing we did is we started changing. And it makes these guys mad, so they start retiring. And these guys over here, which we can't initially replace them because now we're a little bloated faculty. These guys over here, we start making them do their job, and if they don't, we start getting rid of them one at a time. And what happened is that when we got rid of those guys, we replaced them with Brian Rika, Neil Downing, and Greg Arbuckle. And then later on, Mark Doggett. So now we've got a core that has really taken off and really runs this department. Who's responsible for that? A guy named Terry Leeper. And I share that with you just because you're a part of this department, and people need to know that Terry Leeper, and a lot of y'all know Terry, that Terry Leeper is responsible for keeping this department on the map and for this department accomplishing a lot of the things it's accomplished. Certainly Greg has had a lot of impact, Brian and Neil, they've been great faculty and done things, Mark Doggett too, but the reason we're in that position is because of what Terry Leeper did. Okay, that's the end of my editorial. Okay, AMS Department 28. Come 2016, we're the largest department in Ogden. What's our background, our makeup? We have had a grand total of 4 female professors, and I'm going to tell you, we just hired one. 5 female professors since 1928 in this department. How many males have we had? I don't know. We've had hundreds of males that have come into this department. We've had 5 females. Shanaz Ali is the first female in this department ever to get tenure and promotion. She was tenured and promoted this year. Laura Leach was the first faculty in this department, female faculty in this department. Conversely, let's look at office associates. We have never had a male office associate in this department. They've always been females. Some of this, again, goes back to roles. Have we had males apply? Yeah. We didn't interview them. We didn't hire them. I can't say it was sexist. I thought the females were generally better, but of the applicants we get for these positions, they are 95% male. Of the applicants we get for professor positions, they are 95% male. Now, is that changing now? Yeah, it's changing. We're starting to see more females. I serve on a lot of hiring and firing committees. We're probably up to 20% female applicants. Still a small minority. Kind of a funny story about the male office associate. I was at UK at one time, there for 2 years. I was a graduate assistant there. However, we taught classes, graduate assistants, and I worked for a guy named Jack McElroy. We had a contract with the State Department of Education. We had our own secretary. We traveled a lot. There was a needed secretary. Anyhow, we were leaving one time. Jack and I were going somewhere, and they were going to interview for a new secretary. Now, we always had a committee do that. And Jack said, don't worry about it. He said, y'all just interview and hire someone. I was going with Jack. I didn't care. Jack run the show. I was the little man on the totem pole there. At any rate, we come back and he said, yeah, we hired somebody. He said, Tracy Smith. I said, all right, Tracy Smith. So I come in Monday, and there's a guy in my office, or in our alcove there by my office, a guy, big guy, he was 6'5". Came in, he said, hey, my name's Tracy. He shook my hand. I said, yeah, right. He said, I'm your new office associate. I said, yeah, I believe that. I thought, who is this guy out here playing games? Jack comes in, and Jack talks to him a little while. They hired a male office associate. Now, let me ask you, was Tracy a good office associate? Yeah, he was. Was it awkward when Tracy was first hired, and I all of a sudden had a male office associate instead of Bonnie that I was used to? Yeah, it was. Sometimes things feel a little bit awkward, but I look back on it and I think how silly of me to even think anything about him being there. Here's something kind of interesting. Women in advertisement. We talk about social roles, how we we move into these roles and we start believing that this is norm. These are some older advertisements. This one right here came out of like a comic book or some of the teenage books that they would have, Popular Mechanics and stuff. It says, "You're a man if you can draw." And then they got this real sexy lady here and this guy kicked back here, smoking a pipe, of course. Everybody smoked back then. That one's from the 60s, maybe late 50s. I actually remember this one, and I put it up here specifically because I think, what would happen if you did this today? The product was Baby Soft. They got this little gal here, and she's holding her teddy bear. And it says, "Because innocence is sexier than you think." Is that true? I just got a big smile on her face. How about this one? If your husband ever finds out you're not store testing for fresher coffee, this gal's turned over his leg getting a spanking. That wouldn't fly, would it? This guy right here. Show her it's a man's world. He's got his ties, he's kicked back in bed there, and she's coming in and she's serving him breakfast in bed. Why he's wearing the ties beyond me? I don't sleep with my tie. Anyhow, she's serving him breakfast in bed. She's down there in these Van Heusen ties. Subtleties like this, women see this continuously throughout their lives, and it's absolutely amazing. Some of the things that we come across. We talked about the home economics, about how the book instructed women to handle themselves. I've actually got one that's advice for the new bride. I'm not going to read that one to you, but Ida and I have read this one before class, and we've been snickering about it. But at any rate, here's an example of one. I thought this was kind of interesting. This guy was getting ready to speak. Or his wife was getting ready to speak. It was written, she was a speaker at any rate. And it says, "The greater spirituality, sanctity of this blessed sacrament and the glory of God" was her topic, by Ruth Smithers. Okay, Ruth's going to do this. Now this is Ruth's identity. The beloved wife of Reverend D.L. Smithers, pastor of the Arcadian Methodist Church of the Eastern Regional Conference. So he gets more print than she does, and he's not even going to do anything. She's doing the whole thing. That's normal. I used to live out at Handley, and the farm I lived on had a cemetery on it. The cemetery had 136 headstones. And there was this one headstone, and it was Bush, Fred Bush. And it said, Fred Bush, doctor something, and had all this big thing about Fred. He was a doctor, and he'd done all these great things. Headstone right beside it said Martha Bush, wife of Fred Bush, first doctor, and all this stuff about Fred Bush again on Martha Bush's headstone. Her identity was her husband. Power type. Do women use a different power type than men do? Research would say yes. Women are more apt to use a reward-driven power type. Now, in the end, women as a whole are much more headship-driven when we come to the true leadership or headship. In other words, they're going to use reward, coercion, or legitimate in order to control the situation, while the men certainly may use this, but men as a whole are more apt to use the referent or expert. Women are more successful in congruent roles. In other words, what we're saying is we're better at what we're good at. That makes sense to me, and I think it makes a lot of sense that people would be more successful in congruent roles, things that they're good at. Now, women are good at certain things traditionally. See what y'all think about this. And again, this is not something I'm making up. This is research. Women, when they're surveyed and are asked what they're good at, you can take it and you can break it into categories. Women are good at service. That'd be like teaching. Women are good at social. That would be like social worker or something like that. Receptionist. Women are good at health, like a nurse and so forth. Men, on the other hand, what do men identify as good at? Men are good at construction, manufacturing, trades, transportation. Men are known as being good at transportation. Which one pays the most? Traditionally, the male-dominated occupations pay more, even if females are in them. But we can always say, well, we're not discriminating, it's congruent roles. That's true. But are we socializing women not to have an interest in that, not to be good at it, not to develop that? You know, you tell me. Now, I've talked about this congruent roles, non-congruent roles, and so forth. Here's something I want to mention. Non-traditional roles is what I'm actually referring to. Non-traditional roles is the term that we typically use. What constitutes something as a non-traditional role? This is an important number. Remember this. 70%. If 70% of an occupation is one sex, that is to say it is a non-traditional role for the other sex. So what are some examples of a non-traditional role for a male? Elementary school teacher. That's not traditional. A nurse. That would be a non-traditional role. What are some non-traditional roles for females? Electrical engineer. Ida's an electrical engineer. A truck driver. She's driving a truck over here right now. A truck driver would be an example. A welder. A brick mason. Those are non-traditional roles. So subsequently, there's a shortage in what the United States has done, right or wrong, is they say if it's a non-traditional role, we want you to even this out. I want to see more male nurses. I want to see more elementary ed school